So you have a mobile and you wish you could make a game there. Your search is over, as in this video I'll be showing you how to create this amazing game. I know it may seem quite simple, but you'll learn a lot of things by creating it. For example, how to move the player, create a simple AI for the enemy, and so much other stuff. You don't need any previous knowledge, as I'm gonna be explaining everything I do. However, if you already have some experience in game development, nice. Are you ready to create your first game in your mobile? Let's start. Okay, so the first thing I would really like to clarify is that I'm gonna mirror my screen device to my PC so that I can record it, and also so that I can use my mouse and my keyboard to actually make the game, because as you may understand, creating a whole game in a mobile by using the touch input is super uncomfortable and the tutorial would last ages. But okay, you can see here, this is my phone screen. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is to go to the Play Store and we're gonna look for Godot. And as you can see, we have here both versions. So I will really encourage you to use the 4th version of the engine. So let's click right here and click install. It's very important to remember that this version is an early access version, so you may encounter some bugs and errors, but overall it works very fine. Okay, so once this is installed, let's click here where it says open, and well, as you can see, as soon as you open the application, it's gonna ask you to give it all file access. This is mandatory, as in game development we are gonna be creating a lot of scripts, images, etc. So that's why this step is mandatory. So here in the list of apps, you're gonna look for the engine and you're gonna check it. Then you're gonna click on this arrow right here and everything will start loading. Okay, now that we are here, we're gonna click here cancel, because we don't want to open any library or something like that. And okay, so here is the first screen of the engine. We have here some buttons that are the most important one. We can create a new project, import an existing project, edit a project, run a project, well, a lot of stuff. But just to keep it very simple, I'm gonna click here new project and I'm gonna give it a name. So in this case, my project will be called tutorial mobile, for example, but you can give it any name that you want. Okay, after you give it a name, here you can select your path, but in my case I'm just gonna leave the default path, and there I'm gonna create a new folder. Finally, here you can select your renderer. I really recommend you to just leave the default option, which is mobile, and then finally we just have to click here, create and edit. Now the project will be loading and we will have to wait a couple of seconds. It may take a while, but when your project is open, we are now gonna to be setting up our project. But before doing so, I'd like to explain to you some very basic stuff about the interface in this engine. So firstly, on the top right here, we have the 2D environment, that is the one that we're gonna be using on this case. Then we have the 3D environment, the script environment, and the asset library. Okay, but let's now just go to the 2D one, because it's the environment that we are gonna be using. Here we can do some gestures with our fingers in order to stretch the zoom, as you can see, and also with these bars right here, as you can see, I can also move around. On the bottom left, we have the file system. Here, as you can see, we have all the files on the project. because for example here I only have the icon, but here when I create for example a scene or something like that will appear here. Okay, then we have the scene window where we will have all of our game objects. We also have here the inspector. The inspector is the window in which we will be able to modify these game objects. Well, actually in Godot the game objects are called nodes, okay, but we're gonna be talking about that later. So those are the most important things about the interface that you should know. Okay, so now that you should understand the basic interface of the engine, we're gonna create our first scene. So we're gonna click here on our scene, a 2D scene, because we want to actually create a 2D scene, not a 3D scene. And we're gonna rename this scene to something called like main. Then we're gonna click here at the top scene, and here save scene as, okay? And here we're just gonna click save. And as I told you, right here on our file system, as you can see, I see the main scene I've just created. Now it's time to create the walls for our game. So let's click on our main node here and click here the add icon. Now I'm gonna be using my keyboard and my mouse, but you could be doing the same things but in your phone, okay? So here I'm gonna look for static body 2D. I'm gonna click here the check, and here I have my static body on my project. But as you can see, as soon as I have created it, I'm receiving this warning. So let's click here, and it says this node has no shape, so it can collide or interact with other objects. Consider adding a collision shape 2D or collision polygon 2D as a child to define its shape. So that's exactly what we are gonna do. As this body has no collision, it won't be able to actually behave as a wall. So let's rename it to wall, actually to top wall, okay? And then right here we're gonna add another node called collision shape 2D, okay, this one. Okay, and here again we're receiving another warning. A shape must be provided for collision shape 2D to function. Please create a shape resource for it. So we are gonna select the collision shape 2D, and over here in the inspector we can create a shape. So remember what I told you at the beginning, the inspector is a window with which we can modify a node. So we want to modify the collision shape and create an actual shape. So let's create here where it says empty, and here as you can see we have a lot of collision shapes that we can use. We have for example circle, rectangle, capsule, etc. In this case, as I'm gonna create just some walls, I believe the best shape that we could use is actually a rectangle. So let's click that. Then I want to zoom in a little bit. If you're in your phone, to zoom in, remember you just do like this with your fingers, okay? So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so here we also have these blue lines right here. This is the viewport, so this is what we are actually gonna see when we start playing. So for our collision shape, as you can see when I select it here on my scene, we have all these points here that are going to be useful in order to resize our collision. So for example, if I drag right here, as you can see the size changes. So what I want to be doing is just making my collision a little bit larger like this, so that as you can see it covers the top part of my screen. So when I add a ball and a ball collides with this collision shape, it should bounce, and it shouldn't, the ball I mean, continue this way. So this is our top wall. We're gonna duplicate it. In order to duplicate it, it's quite simple. We just have to hold the click there in our mobile, or if you are using a keyboard, Control D. Okay, and here we're gonna look for duplicate right here. Okay, and as you can see we have it top wall 2. So let's rename it to bottom wall. Okay, and now I'm gonna move this bottom wall to the bottom part actually. So in order to do that, I'm gonna be using the move tool. Is this tool right here, and as you can see, these two arrows appear. The red arrow is to move it horizontally, but we don't want to move it horizontally, we want to move it vertically. So with the green line, with the green arrow, we can do that. So let's just click here and drag it right here. It doesn't have to be perfect. Remember to save your changes so that you don't lose your progress. Okay, so now that we have our walls, it's time to create the player. So select the main node, then click here add, and this time we're gonna be adding a rigid body 2D. Also, here we have a very small description about what this node does. So for example, here rigid body 2D, a 2D physics body that is moved by a physics simulation. So this body is gonna be affected by physics. But well, it's one of the most used type of nodes to create any kind of player movement. For example, here you have the mass, the inertia, the gravity scale, and a lot of other stuff that you can modify. So again, here we're receiving the same error as we had the last time, that this node has no shape, that we need to add a collision shape 2D. But before doing that, we are gonna download any kind of white image that you can find on the internet. So literally anything that is white is gonna be useful. So you're just gonna save a white image to your gallery. Once that we have our image, we're gonna go to scene, and then we're gonna go to quit right here at the bottom. So this is actually gonna close the engine. So that's actually what we are looking for. So let's enter again Godot and wait a couple of seconds. Then right here you're gonna find your project. But the important thing that we want here is to click that folder icon, because this should open our file explorer in our project path. But for some reason it's not working, as you can see. So what I really recommend you to do is to just take a screenshot of your path. By doing so, you can write it down or anything. You should have in your phone some kind of app called My Files. Okay, and right here, you're gonna go to the category called Images. Okay, and right here, you will have your white image. So we will just have to click here move, and we're gonna look for the path that we have taken a screenshot of. So as you can see, in this case it's in storage, emulated 0, documents, tutorial, mobile. Or a faster way of doing this is to just go here to this icon and here look for your project name. In my case it is tutorial mobile, so tutorial. As you can see, I can see here tutorial mobile, and you can see here I have my main scene and also I have my icon, for example. So let's move the image here, and now let's come back to Godot. Okay, so now as you can see right here in our file system, we have the white image. So now we're gonna need to add on our rigid body, we're gonna add again a collision shape as we have done before. Collision shape 2D. Okay, we're gonna create a new shape. As we wanna create the player, again the first shape is gonna be the rectangle. Then we're gonna select our rigid body again and add, in this case, a sprite. Okay, a sprite is a type of node that allows to render images. Okay, so here as you can see, it has an argument called texture, and we can load here our white image. Okay, as you can see, it's a little bit big, so in this case you can just resize it using these small dots right here. Okay, Something like that, I believe, would be okay. And then using the move tool, we can reposition it, okay, right here. Now we will have to create the collision shape. So I'm gonna move it firstly right here, and we could actually modify the order here. I mean, we can drag and drop this right here, so that we can see now we have the collision shape more visible. And now we can start modifying its size so it's the most similar as possible to the player. As you can see right here, should be okay. Now our rigid body, we could rename it to player. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, and now we're gonna need to create a script into this player in order to make the player movement. So let's select the player, create a script with this button, and then here, well, you have some options that you can modify. Firstly, you can modify the language of the script. The default language of Godot is GD script, okay, and I really recommend you using this because it's very simple, so you shouldn't modify it. Then inherit, in this case, as you can see, it's from rigid body to D, and that's correct because as you can see, our player game object is actually a rigid body, so again, you shouldn't touch that. Then class name, you don't touch that. And the template, I really recommend you to select empty so that your script is completely empty. Of course, you can use the default template, but as you can see here, it will create a base template for Node with default Godot cycle method. So this will create the script with some things written. Then built-in script, we are not gonna check that, and the path that you can of course modify it. So now let's click create, and as you can see, now we are on our script window. Okay, remember we have the 2D, 3D, and the script window. Okay, so we have here some functions that I'm just gonna delete right here. Okay, so now to actually move the player, as we are in a mobile, we shouldn't be able to move with the keyboard as in some desktop games. So instead of doing that, something that we could actually do is to select here our main node and add a new node called control node. This is used for user interface, and then inside this control node, well, we're gonna add a button. Okay, so we're gonna create two buttons. With one button, you're gonna go up, and with the other you're gonna go down. Okay, so as you can see, if we zoom in a little bit, we can find our button, but it's super small. So with this other tool, the scale tool, as you can see, we can make it a little bit bigger. So I'm just gonna make it a little bit bigger. Okay, maybe something like that would be okay. A little bit bigger, like this. Of course, you can resize it as you want, but maybe something like this. Let's see, this is a little bit big, right? Okay, something like this should be okay. And now with the move tool, I'm just gonna move it down a little bit and a little bit to the right. Okay, something like that. So this is gonna be our up button. Okay, and then again, I'm gonna duplicate it with Ctrl D, or remember, you hold the click for a little bit, and in this case it's gonna be our down button. Okay, and this down button, I'm gonna select it and move it a little bit to the right. Now I'm gonna click here play, and we need a main scene. A main scene is the scene that's gonna be launched as soon as we start playing. So in this case, as we are just gonna have one scene created, we want this to be the main one. So let's just select the current scene, and you will have to wait a couple of seconds. And well, as you can see, this is how the game would be looking once we play it. And in order to go back, you should just click the go back arrow in your device. In my case, I don't have that option. I do this, okay, and I go back. And well, as you can see here, I have a black screen, and now I'm again in the editor. And we could, for example, move the buttons, resize them, and everything you want. But this is just an example, and then of course you can do it better than me. So okay, once you have all your buttons created, we're gonna select the app button, go here to the node, and here we have a signal, a pressed signal, okay? And when we connect this to our player script, what is gonna happen is that when our button is pressed, the code that we write here is gonna be run. So in this case, if for example right here we write print is a function that is gonna show a message, okay, pressing, actually going up, okay. So now we're gonna do the exact same thing but with the down button, okay. So here select down button, okay, node pressed, we connect it to the correct script, and then here we print, okay, going down. You must use all these symbols, okay. Now let's click play. The thing is that actually in Godot Mobile, I think that you can't see these messages by using a print, but well, then we're gonna check them. So let's click firstly 2 times up and 1 time down. Then we're gonna go back, okay, and as you can see here, I have 2 messages of going up and 1 message of going down, so that's correct. Now that we have checked that, it's very important that in our player we disable the gravity, because now if you remember, our player is like in the center of our screen, or is vertically, I mean. So if you really pay attention, what's happening when I play is that the player falls down until it reaches the collision shape we created before. So let's play it and you're gonna see how the player falls down. It's super quick. So let's just wait, and as you can see, it's fallen down. And of course we don't have that here, so you just set gravity scale to 0, like this. Now in our script, we're gonna create a variable. A variable basically stores any kind of value, okay? So to create a variable, we're gonna write var. This is the keyword to create a variable. Then we give it a name, in this case movement, and we assign it a value of vector2 dot 0, okay? Vectors just store 2 values, an x value and a y value, okay? And by saying vector2.0 is creating a vector2 with values 0 and 0, 0 both in x and in y. So now when we press the on button, we want to modify this variable to be, in this case, as we are pressing the button up, vector2 dot up, okay? Why up? Because vector2 dot up is the same as saying this, 0 in x and 1 in y. Something quite weird about Godot is that positive numbers of the y value are actually on the bottom. I mean, for example, if we want to move it down, the most logical would be that the y value should be negative, but as you can see, it's positive. Whereas if we want to move it up, the value is negative. So it's actually the opposite of common sense, let's say. So if we press the up button, we want to actually set it to vector2.down, because we want to modify the position with a negative number so that it goes up. And the same thing will happen when we press the down button, but will be the opposite. So it's gonna be vector2.up, okay? Vector2.up. I know it's quite confusing, but you're gonna see that when I write some code, this will take so much sense. Then we're also gonna need a speed variable. So you're also gonna create it right here, and you're gonna assign any value you want. In my case, for example, let's set it to something like 400. Then we're gonna create a function that is called physics process delta, and this function is used to modify physics bodies or to create behaviors related to physics. So in this case, we're gonna modify our linear velocity to our movement variable times our speed. Also here in our rigid body settings, we're gonna check this box here, lock rotation. And well, now as you can see, when we press the buttons, our player is moving. However, the buttons aren't correct. As you can see, I haven't set correctly the vector, because this is the up button. As you can see, it doesn't go up, it goes down, whereas this goes down. So they aren't correct, but it's quite simple to correct it. We just have to modify here in our code. This is gonna be vector to up, and this is just gonna be vector to down. Okay, vector to down. Now when we click play, we're gonna check that in fact if we click here, it goes down, and here goes down. So this player movement is working. Now we need to create our ball. So let's select our main node, click add, and in this case we're gonna be using a character body 2D. So we're gonna drag and drop it right here, and as you can see here, we have the same warning that we have had a lot of times. So let's attach it a collision shape like this. Okay, and also we're gonna use a sprite. Okay, sprite, in order to render images. So we're gonna create a new shape. In this case, the ball is gonna be a rectangle, because I'm gonna be using again the white rectangle. Okay, like this. And in our sprite, I'm gonna load the white square. So you can also use this quick load, so that you can quick load it. And then again, we're gonna have to modify its size. Okay, so let's modify it right here, right here. Or if it is too difficult, you can actually use here the scale on your transform. So as you can see, it's a bit more easier, I'd say. Okay, so there we have our ball, and let's move it right here. And then we're gonna select our collision shape, and we're gonna firstly move it, okay, where our ball is. Okay, right here. Okay, let's reorder our nodes so that we can clearly see our collision shape. Nice and perfect. Okay, and let's resize the collision shape properly. And now we rename the object to ball. So actually here I would like you to show how you can quickly change the type of the node if for some reason you want to change it. So our ball actually should be a rigid body, as we want it to be affected by physics. So we just gonna hold the click right there, and here we click on change type. Okay, and here we now type the correct type of node. In this case, rigid body 2D, change. Okay, so we didn't have to delete everything and start from scratch. Okay, so now here in our ball, we are gonna modify some things. For example, here the contact monitor, we are gonna enable it, and the max contacts, we're gonna set it to 2. Then the gravity scale will be 0. So with these options, basically we disable the gravity, and then with this contact monitor enable and the max contacts, what we are trying to do is to detect the collisions between the ball, the walls, and the players. Okay, So now in our ball, we're gonna attach a new script. In this case, I want to select the object empty, so that, as you can see, my script is completely empty. Okay, so now here I will need two variables, and the first one is gonna be a direction, and the second one is my speed. Okay, so I'm gonna set it to something like 300. Our direction will be used to, for example, when the ball is going this way and it collides with a player, we're gonna multiply this by -1 so that it starts going the other way. So firstly, on our ready function, okay, the ready function is called as soon as we start playing our game. We're gonna set our linear velocity dot x to speed times direction. So when we start playing, you're gonna see that the ball actually starts going right. Okay, so let's check it. As you can see, the ball goes right. And now in the physics process, we're gonna actually repeat the same line that we have written here. So I'm just gonna copy and paste it here. Okay, and like this. Okay, once I have my ball, I'm gonna select here my player, and I'm gonna move it down a little bit, something like that will be okay. And then I'm gonna duplicate my player and then rename this to enemy. Okay, and then this enemy, I'm gonna move it to the right. Okay, now when we play, you're gonna realize that when the ball collides with the enemy, actually nothing happens. The ball doesn't bounce or literally anything, it just stops, but it continues like the track. So firstly, we're gonna select our enemy, okay, and we're gonna go to the node window groups, and we're gonna here create a new group that is gonna be enemy or player. Okay, add, and it's right here. And in the player, we're gonna do the same thing. Check that the spelling is exactly the same one. So enemy or player, right here, enemy or player. Okay, so we want to actually do this because now on our ball and in the node signals, we can here say that if our rigid body enters a new body, it means that if it is colliding with, for example, a player, an enemy or something like that, we're gonna connect this one. Okay, so if the body with which we are colliding, okay, so this is gonna be if body, okay, dot is in group. Let's see if we can autocomplete it. Is in group. The name of the group was enemy or player. Enemy or player. What we're gonna do right here is to multiply our direction. Okay. Oh, but right here I connected it to the player. Okay, so this is not such a big problem. So I'm just gonna delete these lines. Here in my signals, I'm gonna disconnect it and actually connect it to my ball object. Okay, so as I was telling you, if the body with which I'm colliding, if body dot is in group enemy or player, okay, what we are gonna do is to multiply our direction by -1. Okay, so now in our game, as you can see, the direction of the ball changes, but as you can see, the player and the enemy are a little bit like pushed back when they collide. So we could just set the rigid body mass of both the enemy and the player to 100, for example, okay? Like this and like this. So now when we play again, you're gonna see that in fact when the ball collides, as you can see, the player doesn't change its position. Now in our ball, we're gonna select it and we're gonna make it bounce. So in order to do this, in our physics material field, we're gonna create a new physics material, click it, and then here in our bounce, we're gonna set it to 1, okay? So now when we click play, we're gonna wait. And well, as you can see here, it seems that nothing is happening. But actually, you're gonna see that when I collide with the ball, okay? And it collides with the ball, as you can see, it starts bouncing. But well, the rotation is, well, a little bit weird. So we just here lock the rotation. And now when we play, the ball shouldn't be rotated or something like that. It should just be moved. So let's here collide with it, and as you can see, it starts bouncing, okay? And the same thing happens when it collides with the player. Now, well, the following thing that we should do is that you can realize that when we play the game, our enemy, as you can see, we can't see it in the right of our screen, and that's because Godot is automatically resizing our screen, okay? So let's try to fix that. So we're gonna go to project settings, and then here under our display settings, we're gonna find this window. And right here, well, you can modify, for example, the viewport width and height if you want, but here the important thing is that you check that the aspect is set to keep and the mode is set to viewport, okay? So now when we close it and play, you're gonna see that the engine will create some black bars over here and over here in order to, in fact, keep the aspect of the game. Now, in order to create the enemy script, I don't know why I already have a script in the enemy, but it's actually the player script. So let's just delete this connection between the player script and the enemy, and in fact we're gonna create a new script. So let's just create here a new script with an object empty template and click here create. Okay, make sure that this script is actually attached to the enemy node. And okay, now here we can program the logic. Then well, here in our enemy, the code is just very simple. In our physics process, we're gonna get our ball position dot y by using this code get parent dot get node ball, and then inside our ball game object we just get the position dot y. Then once we have that position y, we assign it to our current position y, which is our enemy position y. So once we play the game, what we are gonna realize is the following, okay? At the beginning, the enemy will be right there, but as soon as we touch the ball, as you can see, it also starts moving because it's currently following the y position, okay? So there we will have our enemy. But something a little bit weird that happens is that, for example, when the ball now collides with it, as you can see, okay, some things really weird happen. So firstly, check that the bounce of the ball is set to 1, and then here in the max contacts, set it to 3, okay? So now when we start playing again, you're gonna notice that actually everything should be working just fine, and actually like most basic stuff should be made, I believe, because as you can see, the enemy moves, also the player moves, and well, the only thing that should be left is to actually create the score points, okay? I would also recommend you to firstly here set the bounce to 0.5 because I believe 1 is a bit too high. Another thing we should do is increase the mass of both the enemy and the player to, for example, 1000, okay? here 1000. Here also, if this kind of yellow line appears when you touch your screen, just click here on the add button and that should disappear. So on the player, again, we're gonna set it to 100. Okay, perfect. Okay, now to create a way of actually finishing the game, what you're gonna do is to, in our ball, we're gonna add here another node that is called a visibility notifier, visible on screen notifier 2D. And here it says detects when the node extents are visible on screen. So we can see that it is much like another collision. So let's select here the move tool, and then we are gonna move it right here on our ball. You can also resize it if you want, but it's not really necessary. And then here we have two signals we can connect: screen enter and screen exited. So I'm gonna connect this screen exited to my ball script. Okay, and right here, once my ball exits the screen, I'm just gonna here print ball exited, for example. So now when I play the game, I'm just gonna leave the ball left the screen, okay, like this. As you can see here in my console, I have the message. So what I wanna do is, once my ball exits the screen, I want to restart the scene. So in order to do this, you're gonna write get tree dot reload current scene. This is basically gonna reload or restart our current scene, and that's exactly what we need. Okay, so now here I am, and as you can see, when the ball exits, the game restarts. Okay, and this is gonna happen also if we score a goal. Okay, also if you're having some problems when it comes to collision detection, you should just increase the variable called max contacts, I believe was called, let me check, this one, max contacts, both I mean in the ball, and also you could change it in the enemy and in the player if you want, but fortunately if you only change it in the ball to 4 or 5, it should be working perfectly fine. So this is the final result of the game. I know there are a lot of things that we could improve. For example, the player movement doesn't work perfectly fine, the collision isn't always perfect, we could here create a score system. There are a lot of things that we could always improve, but it's just like a quick test about how you like this video. If you like it a lot, if you leave a lot of likes, subscriptions, comments, etc., of course I will create a second part, or just create this game from scratch but with a lot of improvements. So again, if you would really like to see more tutorials about Godot in mobile, leave your like, comment and subscription. Now see you in the next one, and bye bye.